Do you get your own resistance politics more from your Irish side or your Palestinian side? Because both sides are pretty anti-colonial.
I have liberation in my blood. Like, I have it completely coursing through my veins. But I think what's important about the story is not that it's a unique story. It's not a unique story. Millions of Palestinians around the world have the exact same story as my family's story.
The reason there was such a brutal crackdown on kids on campus is because the people in power are losing their shit. They know they've lost control of the younger generation. They know they've lost control of the future.
I'm sure you've had people try to silence you as well.
No one's ever tried to silence me, ever, especially on the issue of Gaza. No.
I mean, you haven't had to start your own digital platform in order to speak about it.
This was just a complete coincidence. One thing I always throw in is people confuse hope and optimism. They're not the same thing.
No.
You can be deeply pessimistic about the future and still not give up on hope. We've been doing We're Not Kidding for several months now.
But this is the best episode.
This is the best
I know.
one, without a shadow of a doubt. And I know that Bassem is too busy on tour to ever watch this or hear me say that this is the best one. I'm Mehdi Hasan.
And I'm Alana Hadid.
And We're Not Kidding. And this is our first live taping of We're Not Kidding here in the DC area.
Yeah.
It is great to see you all here. Thank you to our generous hosts and sponsors today, Trivision Studios in Washington, D.C. Let's give a round of applause to Trivision. Look at this. This is cool.
Very
and of
cool.
course, save your biggest round of applause for my co-host today, activist, influencer, entrepreneur, fashion designer, creative director of Watermelon Pictures, the one and only Alana Hadid.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's just jump straight in.
Yeah,
we're
let's
in
do
the
it.
DC area. You have flown here from California, but you're from here,
I
aren't you?
am from the DMV. I'm very excited. Yeah. Born and
Some
raised.
people in the crowd are excited about that. Not everyone in the
Well, my
DMV.
mom's here, so yeah.
Oh, let's give it up for Alana's mom. So you grew up in the DMV in Northern Virginia and DC.
Yeah.
Has it changed? I've lived here for nearly a decade in the DC area. The food's gotten better. I will
The
say that in the
food
last
is
day.
amazing. But, you know, I mean, I think it's still like one of the best places to live. So, yeah, I mean, I left, but it's still amazing. You know?
Are you a foodie, Alana?
I am a foodie, and there's amazing food here. And, you know, obviously Palestinian food is the best. I'm not gonna fight you on this. Just agree with me.
Okay, I'm gonna half agree with you. Indian food's obviously better than Palestinian food. But
I'll give you that.
There are not that many good Indian restaurants in the DMV. There are very good Palestinian ones. So
I win.
You win. So there's a question I want to ask.
Oh, please, I hope there's a few.
And when racists ask the question, it's not a great question.
Okay.
It is the question of, you know, if a racist says, where are you really from?
Oh.
But I don't think it's always a racist question. Sometimes I think it's a very interesting
Yeah.
question. It's a conversation opener.
Yeah.
I think with you, I think it's very relevant to what we want to talk
Sure.
about. Where are you really from?
I mean, I'm really from Virginia, but but my mother is American Irish and my father was born in Palestine. So yeah, I'm Palestinian Irish American.
So how do you end up as this figure now on a lot of our social media, on Instagram, all over the place, talking about Palestine, the Palestinian part of your heritage? Tell, for people who don't know, and I'm sure people in the audience, everyone knows, but for people watching at home around the world, what is your link to Palestine? How does your family descend from Palestine?
So my grandparents were both born in Palestine, as were their parents, their grandparents, their grandparents' grandparents. And my father's father was from Safed. My grandmother was from Nazareth. My father was born in Nazareth in 1948, when he was about 9 days old. Wow. His family was violently expelled from their home. My grandmother went one way, my grandfather went another way. They were separated from each other for, I think it was close to a year before they were reconnected. And then they were refugees all over the world until they ended up in the DMV in Virginia.
Where did they end up after Palestine?
They were in Syria, Lebanon, Tunisia, like you name it. They were everywhere.
And I read somewhere that your grandparents had taken in refugees from Poland.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah, they took in refugees from Poland that were living with them for close to 2 years. When my grandfather came back from work, those refugees were living in their house, and they, along with, I would imagine it would have been the Irgun or Haganah. They were forcibly expelled at gunpoint from their homes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did a debate on Zionism and anti-Zionism in the UK a few years ago, and I was on the stage with Professor Ilan Pappé, who's an anti-Zionist Israeli historian. And he gave the analogy to the British crowd. He's like, imagine somebody came in the middle of your home and said, get out of your house or go live in the garage or the shed in the backyard. And that analogy is always given.
Yeah.
You're saying your grandparents went through a literal version.
Oh,
of that.
yeah.
Literally, their own house was taken over.
Yes, but I think what's important about the story is not that it's a unique story. It's not a unique story. Millions of Palestinians around the world have the exact same story as my family's story. They were, out of the goodness of their hearts, they took in refugees after World War II, and those refugees ended up taking their homes, or they were forced out of their homes and later, settlers took over their homes. So it's a common story. It's a common Palestinian story. It's a story of settler colonialism.
Yes, indeed, and well put. So you end up in Virginia, you say.
Yeah.
Your parents move here.
Yeah.
You're half Palestinian, half Irish. You're growing up. Just to double check, there's you, there's your older sister, there's your younger brother, a couple of sisters no one's ever heard of.
No one's ever heard of, yeah.
And I just wonder, what is it like growing up in a household like that? I think people will be fascinated to hear what it was like.
Oh, growing up, well, I grew up with my mom and my older sister, and then my younger sisters and brother came later. So, we're the original Hadids. It's okay, they hear that all the time.
Your mother is only reluctantly clapping, I can see.
So, I think we had a very beautiful, kind of blended family. And I think we grew up just, always learning about Palestine, if that was kind of the question. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were kind of rightfully so scared to talk about the fact that they were Palestinian because it was made synonymous with terrorism and all of these other really horrible isms. And we were just always taught that we were Palestinian, we should be proud of it. And we talked about it a lot. And I think it took a long time for me to realize that it was something that people didn't talk about. I was just a proudly Palestinian.
And before I get to that, I'm just fascinated by, you said your mother's Irish,
yeah, my mom
your father's Palestinian.
Yes.
Do you get your own resistance politics, your anti-colonial stance, more from your Irish side or your Palestinian side? Because both sides are pretty anti-colonial.
I mean, my mom is here, so my Irish side.
Okay. I mean, Ireland has been great on Gaza since October 7th.
I have liberation in my blood. I have it completely coursing through my veins. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of the most amazing things that, within me, I have liberated people and people who will be liberated. So, I think that's
fantastic. Inshallah, as Joe Biden might say.
Oh, God.
Just when was so you said you've been proudly Palestinian.
Yes.
When do you first turn up in Israel, and what is that like?
Well, I went to Palestine, but thank you. They might call it that, but I flew to Palestine. Okay. But yeah, the first time I went was in 2018. When I flew there, I think the first time I really had no idea what to expect, and I got exactly what they wanted me to get. They knew I was coming, and I was stopped immediately. I was gone. Anyone who's flown in through Tel Aviv has gone to the office. Anyone who has Arab blood, or you're not white, or you're not Jewish. it doesn't matter what passport you have, you end up at the office. I don't know if you've ever been to the office.
It's happened.
Yeah, when you walk up, the first thing they say to you is, I mean, they don't even acknowledge
They
you.
greeted me at the plane door.
Oh.
I got plain door.
You're chic. I got all the way to passport control. I'm not as cool as you. No, I got all the way to, and they said, go to the office. And the way that the guy said it was as though like I had always been to the office. Like obviously you're a Palestinian, you know where the office is. But I was confused and I just stood there for a little while. And then finally I was taken to the office along with, everyone that was there had either visited an Arab country or was of, Palestinian or Arab descent. And people had been there for 8 hours, 16 hours, 12 hours, 5 hours. I was lucky to have only been there for like 3 or 4 hours. But a lot of questioning.
They took my iPad.
Oh.
And then they said, we'll send it to you. Oh. It's like 2 weeks later, I got the iPad and I put it in the trash.
Yeah, of course. You're like, let me keep this.
Yeah, I'm going to check my email and put all my passwords and codes into this iPad.
Definitely. That's hilarious.
Sure. Thanks for that. I'd already bought a new one.
Let me take a selfie.
I'd already bought a new one. Can you imagine? I've got my iPad. Let me log in and write an article.
When did you go for the first time?
I haven't been for many years, actually.
Yeah.
The last time I went was about a decade ago.
Yeah.
So I went to Tel Aviv and I went to Ramallah. It was for Al Jazeera when I used to work for Al Jazeera English. Yeah. And it's fascinating, obviously, when you meet people on the ground. How did you find, I don't know what interactions you had with Israeli society. How did you find it as a Palestinian, as an American, as a Hadid?
Yeah, I had interaction. I mean, I think everyone thought me being there was like me endorsing Israel. It wasn't. But I was surrounded by a lot of anti-Zionists. I was, also obviously you interact with Zionists and with, very staunch Israelis. I think people didn't really know what to make of me, so they were kind of like testing the waters.
What year is this?
2018. My advocacy online was more about me saying I was Palestinian, talking about being Palestinian at that point. And so I think people were just kind of a little like, what is she here for? Yeah. Like, am I a sleeper cell? It was interesting, but I spent a lot of time in the West Bank. I was in, obviously Nazareth with my family, which was, phenomenal, but I traveled all over. And
do you feel the Israelis are intimidated by the Hadid family?
I mean, I think they are now, for sure. Yeah, I mean, and as they should be,
So before we get to now,
yeah,
2021, there's a bombing campaign then, of course. The world did not begin on October the 7th, as we know.
Yeah.
2009, 2012, 2014, 2018, 2021.
Yeah.
And I remember it well because I just joined NBC and I was covering it. There was a big attack campaign after the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood protests.
Yes. Kerusalem,
Gaza. And you become more vocal on social media, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Is that when we meet Lanzi Bear?
I mean, Lanzi Bear has been around for a while. That's actually a name my mom called me when I was a child. So, I love the awe. I think 2021 really was a moment where I just felt like I had enough. I was seeing, I think, as well with social media, this was like a moment that social media became a real important part of, the story of Palestine, especially with the Al-Kurd family. Muna and Muhammad were speaking out, and that was huge. They were, basically live streaming their ethnic cleansing, which I think, brought light to Sheikh Jarrah. There was also, a storming of Al-Aqsa, which was horrific, and people were putting that on their live streams. And I just felt inclined to use my platform as a way for those stories to be shown to more people. And, I think a lot of people on my social media hadn't really been exposed in that way and were really shocked.
And did you expose yourself to a whole new world of online trolls, critics, attention,
I did.
Spotlight?
I expected it to some extent. I don't know to what extent I thought it was going to. Yeah, I mean, for sure.
But I bet it was worse than whatever you expected.
Oh, 100%. But, as time has gone on, I've just expected it. You're not going to get away with talking about something that's incredibly important and that could, affect the entire world without people coming out and trying to silence you. I'm sure you've had people try to silence you as well.
No one's ever tried to silence me. ever, especially on the issue of Gaza. No.
I mean, you haven't had to start your own digital platform in order to speak about it.
This was just a complete coincidence. My wife and kids try and silence me. They're more effective than corporate executives. It is a tricky time, and I wonder how you think your life may have changed since you started speaking on this.
I mean, it's changed, in multiple different ways. I don't think I ever thought that I would be this, like an activist in this way. I never thought I would be on a stage doing this and speaking about Palestine. I never thought I would be, doing a speech in front of 400,000 people in DC. I never thought any of those things. I lost a ton of friends, but they obviously weren't my friends to start with. So, things have changed, but I think for the better. I'm doing something that's going to, very hopefully free the world. So
let's talk about the friends, the speech, what's happened over the last few months. Saturday, October 7th. What do you remember about that day?
It's odd because I think at first I didn't think much of it. I know that sounds crazy, but I was like, wow. I kind of, I can't believe that this has happened. And now I'm bracing myself for what's going to happen. And I think we always know that no matter what happens around Palestine, Gaza is the whipping boy. Yeah. So I was just, bracing myself for what was going to happen. And, I never thought that we would be 9 months into a genocide. But yeah, I mean, I just remember hearing about it and then just bracing myself, and a lot of conversations with friends about what they thought what the next steps were going to be.
The idea of us being here 9 months later, I guess I didn't see that either.
No.
And I remember after 9/11, yeah. I was in the UK. I'd started a new job. I was 23 or whatever I was. And I remember the second plane going into the building, and I was in the 9th floor of a tall building in the UK where people started fleeing out of. And one of the other journalists, a lot of media programs were being made, and one of them walked past the screen. I remember it vividly, and looked at the screen and said, "What have the Palestinians done now?" I remember it so vividly, before we even knew it was bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, etc. And that was the mindset, to go back to your point about the 80s, 90s, 2000s.
100%.
Palestinian terrorists, all the movies. And on that, and I knew at the time there's going to be a backlash, and people are going to die in Afghanistan. And they did. Innocent people who had nothing to do with it. And Gaza, the same thing. I remember that weekend. I remember going on MSNBC Sunday night and saying, the people of Gaza, more than half of them are kids. This is already a place that's been besieged. And I remember thinking to myself, mowing the lawn, right? You heard this phrase, the Israelis go and mow the lawn.
Of course.
This is not mowing the lawn, what we've seen over
Or keeping them on a diet.
Not that the previous mowing the lawns were ever mowing the lawns, but that euphemism was for kind of short, sharp, kill a bunch of people and get out, versus this, which is just never ending. And it's never ending. It's been live streamed to our phones by the brave Palestinian journalists on the ground in Gaza who have risked their lives. Many of them have lost their lives at record numbers. And then on top of the brave people on the ground, you have the people in the West, quote unquote, who are using Mark Zuckerberg's platform and to a lesser degree Elon Musk's platform to try and give context and analysis. And what I've enjoyed about you, and I'll be honest, I did not follow you closely until after October the 7th.
That's okay.
But what I see...
You're forgiven.
Thank you. What I've seen your stuff since October 7th is you are very particular about a word I love, and I say on my shows, and I said it at MSNBC, I say it at Al Jazeera, I say it at Zateo. Context.
Yes.
Right? The importance of providing why is this happening?
Yes.
Not just what is happening.
I mean, I was doing that. I was trying to give context to Palestine and Palestinians for a really long time. When you try to give context, you get a lot of backlash. I mean, I was immediately trying to give context. I think I was giving context on October 7th. And if I had my phone, I would read you some of, actually, it would just bleep, 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 bleep. The DMs were not, too savory. But I think that's super important. People, I think, are just understanding what Palestinians and what other oppressed people and what, Arabs to a large extent have understood about Palestine for a long time. And I felt like I was educating people on things that I've had to educate myself on. Just because we're Palestinian doesn't mean we know all the history. We've had to learn all of these things in order to combat all of the things that, are thrown at us by Zionists.
One of the things, I was at MSNBC 3.5 years, and one of the things I was proud of is to be able to use that platform to get other voices on,
Yeah.
right? People you don't see. We talk about Palestinians being dehumanized. The only way you can quote unquote rehumanize, and I hate the phraseology because Palestinians are humans, whether anyone wants to dehumanize them or not, is to allow people to speak,
Yeah.
right, who have been silenced. And another thing I've noticed about your profile online is you use it to give other creators, other influencers, other people a platform and a voice,
Yeah.
using your name and your reach.
I mean, I think that's the point of, much of the point of being a Palestinian in the diaspora is, I have this ability to speak, relatively freely. And I wanted to use that as, not just an amplifier, but like a bullhorn for, these people. I want to make sure that they have a place where they know that they can come to, give me their content and collaborate on content and make sure that people are understanding from Palestinians what's happening in Palestine. There's a lot of really phenomenal anti-Zionist Jews. There's a lot of really amazing historians. But, right now it's so important for the Palestinian context to finally be part of the message and for us to have a voice.
In a way I've never seen before.
In a way that I never believed that I would maybe see in my lifetime. Yeah.
Like you can now say Nakba.
Yeah, I know. And
people understand.
And you don't have to tell them what it is. Yeah.
And that is, thanks Mark Zuckerberg. Maybe you didn't mean it that way, but.
I know. I mean, you can also say Zionist
we'll come to that in a moment. I do want to mention Meta, Instagram, and Zionism in a moment. But just going back to October, November, you have this horrific attack.
Yeah.
You have innocent people killed. You have the weekend. People like you and me are reacting in real time.
Yeah.
Trying to make sense of the tragedy that's happened in Israel. Also the tragedy that's about to be, again, pushed onto the people of Gaza.
100%.
And on top of that, you've got this backlash in the West from people who police the discourse and say that anyone, especially anyone brown, non-white, who takes a pro-Palestinian position must be pro-Hamas.
Of course.
Right? And it's really funny, by the way, this just say to the audience here and to the audience at home, you'll notice whenever somebody is called pro-Hamas in an online article, there'll be a link.
Yeah.
And I love to click on the links. Oh, they're pro-Hamas. Click.
Click.
And the link takes you to they gave money to UNRWA.
Yeah.
It's like there's not even any receipts, right? They don't even try it.
Yeah.
When college protesters, they're all pro-Hamas. Based on what? They want a ceasefire. It's absurd. But what happened to you guys and your family, there comes a moment where the Israelis have a missile where they write the Hadid family names on.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I mean,
I don't know how you react to that.
Obviously that moment was really upsetting. And there's been other moments that have been incredibly upsetting. What I refocus on is not the fact that our names are on it, but that missile is going to murder Palestinians, and that as an American, my taxpayer money is funding that, and that's what I refocused on instead of oh my gosh, we're so important that they put I think that was for their own clout. And, it's really sad when during a genocide you're clout chasing.
I mean, the Israeli government official accounts have called out your sisters.
Oh,
which is
100%.
That's really sad. Your foreign government.
You
in the
have
middle of a
nothing
war
better to do.
There are hostages still not freed that you claim to care about. You're busy fighting.
That's
on
what you're
social media.
tweeting about? Like, give me a break.
It's insane. So let's just stick with the social media conversation because, as I say, it's a double-edged sword, social media. Right? I'm a parent. I say this to my kids. I say this to up-and-coming journalists. Social media, I wouldn't be where I am today. I would not be sitting on this stage in the United States with Zeta if I didn't have social
100%.
media. But at the same time, it's done a lot of damage to me. It's caused a lot of stress to me and my family. It's been a source of threats and harassment, all of that stuff. And it's been a source of huge misinformation and hate. And I look at what's happening since October 7th, and I look at what people with platforms have done. And it's been, I call October 7th a masks off moment, right? We've seen who a lot of people really are, especially prominent people. And there's kind of three people. There's the people who have used their platforms for good, to call out a genocide, to call out starvation. There are people who've just stayed silent.
Yeah.
And then there's the worst group of people, obviously, the people who have just used it to support a genocide.
Yeah.
And I wonder, as someone who, I'll put this loosely, moves in some of these circles maybe, what do you make of celebrities who are not just clout chasing, but literally coming and going out, whether it's your Amy Schumer or your Sarah Silverman, whoever it is, just saying genocidal shit publicly. Michael Rappaport says some insane stuff.
Insane stuff. But people, Zionists love him
and the
because...
last time I liked Michael Rappaport was he was in Friends.
Oh,
I
was he? I don't even remember that.
It's some small role. But I just wonder what you think about, in that first group, the people who have spoken out.
Yeah.
a lot of them have suffered career consequences.
100%.
You look at someone like Melissa Barrera.
Susan
You look at
Sarandon.
You look at a bunch of people who have taken a hit, and people like Melissa have just have carried on. They haven't shrunk away.
Yeah.
I mean, if Scream 18 doesn't get made, I'm sure the world will survive. But I was talking to a Hollywood celebrity recently who has taken a position on this, and he said to me, I will carry on taking this position because ultimately I'm going to be judged by history.
100%.
And that's where we are, right? This is a historic moment.
That's what boggles my mind when it comes to, our government and representatives. Like, history is going to remember this, and do you really think that they're going to be looking at you kindly? Joe Biden is called Genocide Joe. I don't think that's going away. I believe that will be in textbooks. And so I think that these people obviously are more concerned about their paychecks now than they are,
I think
the
it's
future.
worse than paychecks. I think some of them believe this stuff. They think Palestinians are not human. They're animals. They're all terrorists. They deserve what they get. I think a lot of them are actually just racist.
Oh, 100%. I think that there are. But I also think that there are definitely people who are like, I'd rather just not quite look at the sun yet. You can't, you can't cover the sun with your thumb forever. I think that they're just, covering the sun with their thumb and hoping that, they're not going to get burnt.
You have not been afraid to speak out.
I mean, sure. Of course I've been a little bit.
What's it like just suddenly realizing in the middle of this tragedy, you have a voice, you have a platform, not just a social media platform, you literally spoke in front of 400,000 people.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, that was like my first major speech. That was kind of like my first speech.
So I wrote a book about speeches. And one of the pieces of advice I give is when you start public speaking, start in front of 5 or 10 people. You did not take that advice. You started in front of 400,000 people.
Yeah. I mean, I imagined there were only 10 people there, but...
I actually think, before we chat about it, I think we can play a clip of you.
Oh, God.
Let's have a watch.
I don't know if I watched this.
The brutality of this genocide, occupation, and the ongoing Nakba by the state of Israel have been laid in front of the world, and the people have spoken. We have flooded the streets, taken to social media, called our representatives, boycotted, shut down bridges, streets, and businesses, and still our government and media are complicit. This is not democracy. President Biden, we the people demand to be heard. We the people demand justice. We the people demand liberation. We the people demand an end to a genocide and an end to a brutal occupation of Palestine.
Yeah, I mean, you missed my favorite part of the speech was when I said, I condemn Israel. That's my favorite part.
Okay.
I said it twice, actually.
But I'm sure you said 10 times.
Yeah.
And then Hamas first, right? To get permission to be able to say that.
Yeah.
Is it amazing, though? I mean, I came of age politically. I got radicalized. And I say that in a political way.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
I don't mean radicalized in that way. But radicalized politically.
Yeah.
You have to say that as a Muslim. You have to be like, hi to the FBI guy in the audience. In 2003, in the Iraq War, right? I was 22, 23 years old. I was a young researcher in TV in London, and I marched against the Iraq War. Those were huge crowds.
Yeah.
Up until Gaza, it was the greatest war crime of my lifetime, was the invasion of Iraq. And up until Gaza, those were the biggest crowds we had seen globally in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And now you have, as we discussed earlier in the show, you now have people showing up to protests, understanding what Nakba means, not just going online, but turning up in the streets.
Yeah. I mean, I was just shocked. I knew that there was going to be a huge turnout, but 400,000 people coming out for Palestine, it was something, it still makes me kind of emotional now to see the amount of people that are coming out for Palestine is just not something I knew would happen in my lifetime, in my father's lifetime. For my family to get to see this is just mind-blowing.
And here is a phrase that will get me and us in trouble, but we should say it.
Do it.
It's a global intifada.
It is. It is a global intifada.
It is a shaking off. It is an uprising. It is people in the streets. And, people lose their minds when you talk in this way. I went on Piers Morgan's show for my sins.
Oh, yeah.
a few weeks ago.
I know. I was going to ask you about that. What have you done?
What have I done? I was on last week talking about something
Yeah,
else.
I saw it.
But I was on a few weeks ago talking about Palestine.
Yes.
And, he's obsessed, and
yeah.
I'm the only guest I think he's never asked, have you condemned Hamas at the beginning? But we got into discussion, it was during the campus protest, at the peak of the campus protest. And this word intifada was obviously. And I said, did you know, Piers, that if you go to the US Holocaust Memorial Museum's website in Arabic, the page on the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising is called the Warsaw Ghetto Intifada.
Intifada, of course.
So were the Jews in Warsaw, were
Yeah.
they Hamas? And that went viral, and I'll tell you what happened. A bunch of people, actually a Jewish journalist friend of mine who I've known for years, sent me a text.
Really?
And he said, up until now I defended you, but you're clearly an anti-Semite.
Oh, I thought it was going to be a
context. It was
different...
10 o'clock at night. Up until now I haven't spoken to him at all since October 7th. Not a good friend, someone I know from the industry. He said, but you're an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
It's clear to me. No context, don't know what I did, but I had to put two and two together. There's a viral clip this evening on social media of me saying intifada is not inherently anti-Semitic. It's a totally legitimate Arabic word referring to uprising. And I thought about that, and then I thought about what you said a moment ago about losing friends over this.
Yeah.
Again, it's not just a mass soft moment for kind of celebrities and what they think about politics, but about our relationships.
Oh, yeah.
I think in a way that even 9/11 was not, there's a way that people have kind of lost their minds in many ways, and people are, I don't know what the phrase is, just going crazy at each other, really for no reason sometimes.
Well, it's radicalized liberal Zionists as well, like, people who are like, peace and we should all get along, two-state solution. Those people have become like, kill them all people. I've had a lot of friends say similar things to what your friend said, like, I've defended you. And, my response to that is, if you have to defend me, you're in the wrong room.
Well said.
Seriously, like, why are you in a room with a bunch of people you have to defend me to? You should be in a room with people who understand, what's going on. And obviously, if that's the room you want to be in, then I don't think I want to be there with you.
Perfect segue to my next question, which is,
thank you.
There's a room on Wednesday that's going to be filled with American lawmakers, and they're going to be applauding a man who the ICC chief prosecutor has requested an arrest warrant for.
Yeah.
This coming Wednesday,
Yeah.
Benjamin Netanyahu will be here in D.C. This is a guy who has been on the scene for decades, has been accused of war crimes multiple times over the decades. Since October 7th, every human rights group in the world has pretty much come out and said Israel is guilty of war crimes on Netanyahu's watch. The ICC chief prosecutor has requested an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu, a reminder that arrest warrant came after he was given advice by a man named Theodore Meron, who is a 94-year-old Holocaust survivor who was once Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. He says, arrest Netanyahu. And this guy's going to get, I don't know how many standing ovations.
The last time he came, it was like one of the longest standing ovations.
He comes a lot. He's come, I think, 3 times already.
They love giving him standing ovations.
And the Democrats co-signed on the invitation. This is the insane world we live in. Chuck Schumer gave a speech saying Netanyahu's an obstacle to peace, he should be gone. But hey, why don't you come visit us?
Well, because the scapegoating didn't work. They were trying to scapegoat him.
They were trying to nudge in
Yeah,
Benny
they were
Gantz.
like, oh, it's all
we
Netanyahu.
need a moderate Zionist there dropping the
Yeah.
bombs, not the extreme Zionist.
They're like, let's push this all on Netanyahu, and 'cause he's a Yahoo, and let's, it's all him. And then they were like, okay, maybe this will work. Maybe he'll get out, and then we can, keep our precious state. And it didn't work. And so they were like, they had to kind of rein him back in so they could keep their money.
Has that been a slogan at protests? Netanyahu, he's a Yahoo?
No, I don't know, but I'm going to start.
I think we could have something there. From the river to the sea,
Netanyahu
Netanyahu
is a Yahoo.
I'm coining it now. Yours. But on a serious note, I do think it is a huge mistake for supporters of Israel. I think they know it. I think quote-unquote liberal Zionists know what a bad move it is to have Netanyahu, who's a super unpopular politician. Nobody likes Netanyahu in America apart from the House GOP.
Yeah.
And he's turning up to speak to remind everybody, almost to rub people's faces in it, that yes, you can do an arrest warrant request for me.
Yeah.
Yes, I can kill 40,000 people, including 15,000 kids, but I'll still be welcomed and applauded. And I think that's going to piss off a lot of ordinary Americans who don't follow this stuff closely.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of people who really just don't understand the ramifications of what that is. They're like, oh, well, he's a world leader.
Yeah. True.
You
We've
know,
had some dodgy wording
yeah,
that's come through
exactly.
this city,
I mean,
I think it's fair to say.
Our own president is supporting this genocide, and we have him speak to us all the time. So,
Yes. And he's going to be meeting with Netanyahu, having not met with him up until this point.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Netanyahu, his longevity is amazing. As Jon Stewart once pointed out on The Daily Show, he doesn't age. He looks the same as he did in 2002 when he came to DC to tell everyone to invade Iraq. And
Yeah.
that worked out so well. Before we wrap up, I do want to bring in our audience. A couple of other things I do want to talk to you
okay.
about.
Yeah.
Is you mentioned earlier about social media platforms.
yeah.
Meta right now is going through a review and saying that Zionism could be added, thanks to a lot of lobbying from
Yeah.
groups like I assume ADL and AJC and others, that Zionism is now going to be, I don't know what the exact details are, they haven't been completely clear, but it could be one of the words that gets you banned or struck off or treated as a hate
I
speech
think they've
and race.
already added it. That is like part of the practices of Meta now. Like they are targeting people who are using the word Zionism. They say it's very nebulous, like what the actual way that you use it that's okay, and the way, like, I guess it's like, if I love Zionists, then you can stay on.
I mean, personally, I don't know if you agree with me. I do think there is a debate to be had about how you use it, right? I don't know if Facebook has defined it.
Yeah.
But like, if you're saying I'm opposed to Zionism, the ethnic cleansing that removed Palestinian people from their land, obviously you should be able to say that. I think if you do go scream at a random Jewish person in the street, hey, Zio, then you could argue that's hate speech, right? And obviously people don't understand what Zionism is. It's a political ideology. It is not Judaism, right?
100%.
I know some people in the Jewish community want to claim it's the same. It's not the same.
No.
A history teacher is not the same. And I'll always remember there's a former British member of parliament called Louise Mensch.
Yeah.
Who's a little bit odd. And she was tweeting once, anyone who comes on my timeline, she was tweeting on Twitter.
Okay.
And she goes, anyone who comes on my timeline and says Zionism, they're banned, blocked immediately. And someone said, what about Theodore Herzl? Okay. And she said, him as well. Which I thought was ironic, which tells you that we need a little bit of education.
Yeah, but I mean, don't take it from me what, Zionism is. Talk to an anti-Zionist.
Yeah, but now the House of Representatives that's hosting
Yes.
Netanyahu has passed a resolution saying anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
Yes.
Which is, absurd in and of itself, but what I find so offensive is, and as speaking to a Palestinian American, you're basically telling Palestinian Americans that not only do you have to give up your land, rights, you have to be okay approving of the ideology that did that.
Yeah, and you have to be, you can't talk
You're
about
racist
it.
if you're
Yeah,
opposing.
100%. Yeah, I mean, that's what, we've been dealing with for a long time. So I think Palestinians weren't like, ooh, shock. That's the kind of, silencing that we've always had. It's just never been, passed by Congress.
I mean, Palestinians, in my view, are the original victims. If cancel culture exists,
Yeah.
it's pro-Palestinian
Yeah.
speech on campus, in the media,
Yeah.
in Congress.
Canary Mission.
But
fun
apparently
little
the
thing.
free speech warriors go quiet when
Yeah.
it comes to standing up for Palestinians. So, on that note,
Yes.
you are making lots of noise, not just on social media, but in the space of films and filmmaking.
I'm trying.
You are now part of this amazing new endeavor. Tell us about your amazing new endeavor, the name, what it's about, what the goal is.
Yeah, it's called Watermelon Pictures. It's very exciting.
Round of applause.
Yeah, thank you. I can't really take credit for it. I'm the creative director, but it was started by two amazing brothers, Hamza and Badia Ali, who are Palestinians, whose father and uncle started a Palestinian-led distribution company out of Chicago in 1976. Which, obviously was pretty groundbreaking. And they had been wanting to, start something that was supporting not just Palestinian films, but, films of silenced voices. And so we've focused on Palestine now because obviously that's something that we are invested in. But, we are in production in a lot of films that, are going to highlight not just the history, not just the, the horror of what's happened to Palestinians, but, love stories and, romantic comedies and sitcoms and all the kind of things that you need to know.
That you never see?
Yeah, the full spectrum. And I think that people just need the full spectrum of Palestinian life.
I mean, the best way to get across your message
Yeah.
through storytelling.
You would
We all
watch
know
that, right?
I would watch it. I mean, storytelling for me is key. I always tell the story. And I don't know if people have heard me tell the story before in other venues, but when I worked at Channel 4 in the UK, I was a commissioning editor back in the day, and Channel 4 is a very progressive, seen as liberal channel. And they had done a show called Undercover Mosque, which was a documentary series where they went into British mosques and they filmed the imam saying something crazy. This is like at the height of the war on terror. It's like, look at these extremists. And a lot of Muslims protested outside Channel 4 saying this is unfair, this is selective editing, some of these mosques aren't representative of the British Muslim community, et cetera, et cetera. There was a big fight going on. In Channel 4, the bosses at Channel 4 felt a little guilty because we're supposed to be the progressive, multicultural channel. And I remember I was this junior young person channel and I got called into the bosses.
Oh, God.
Like, you're a Muslim. Come in the office.
Hey.
What do we do? They're like, what do we do? They're like, we do. And Channel 4 actually did really good Hajj coverage. And one of the other people went out and filmed the Hajj.
That's amazing.
We do the Hajj coverage and Muslims aren't happy with us. Should we do more Hajj coverage? And I was like, and I said, it's once a year. What I said to them was, yeah, it's great you do the Hajj coverage. I'm glad. But as long as you just see people through one prism, it's a problem, right? If you just see Palestinians through the prism of the conflict, that's not real. If you just see Muslims as religious people, that's not real either. And the point I made at the time, Channel 4 was famous for having property shows. They were all the property shows, and they had game shows, they had quiz shows. They had, what was it, 15 to 1, all these other ones, I can't remember the one. And I said at the time to the boss, I said, how come there are no Muslims on your property shows or your quiz shows? Muslims buy houses. Muslims like quizzes. Right? How come we only ever see... We do. Anyone who knows, I like to play games. Board games. Some people in this audience have lost to me in board games. I'm just saying. But the point is that this is the problem where we have normalized the view of Muslims and Arabs and brown people
100%.
Only through certain prisms. You began the conversation reminding, like, as when you were growing up, as Palestinians are terrorists. They're the people on Pan Am flight, whatever it is. And now you have this opportunity. And I, in my own small way, not through not through a filmmaking company, but through news and current affairs, is to be able to platform different voices. Say, you know what, we actually do different things.
Yes, and we can be funny too. Apparently, or maybe, I don't know.
So I did this one.
Yeah, to show that you're funny.
Not me. No, I have resting angry Muslim face.
That's actually really good.
When I started doing interviews. When I started doing interviews, I came in front of the camera in 2012. I was behind the scenes. And the producer in my ear, who's actually the producer in my ear right now.
Oh, really?
I've known him for over a decade. And he said to me, when the camera cuts to you, you look very angry. And I said, that's my paying attention face. And for years, I just thought I was paying attention. Apparently, people thought I was trying to bite their head off.
Well, that's probably because you did afterwards.
But anyway, no, but genuinely, we did start this podcast, We're Not Kidding, because I thought people like Bassem Youssef, and we've had Amanda Seals, and we've had a bunch of interesting people, and we've got some other great guests coming up. But we just thought the idea of, let's have conversations about serious stuff, but it doesn't always have to be through the prism of seriousness and serious people.
Well, I just want to say thank you, because honestly, the media has been, a source of a lot of pain during this, this time, and to be able to watch something like this and be a part of Zateo that is, funny and fun and informational and, educational has been really amazing. So I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to go to the audience, but I can't go to the audience with you clapping me, so I have to say, Watermelon Pictures, Alana Hadid, give it up to Alana Hadid.
Thank you.
And we're very excited. It's our first live taping of the show. It's a lot of fun. We're going to take questions from the audience. There is a microphone coming to the middle of the aisle. There's not going to be a microphone going through the crowd. You actually have to stand up bravely, boldly, #resistance, and walk to the microphone. So if anyone would like to go to the microphone first and go. Yes, gentleman here's first.
Hi. Be very clear. I agree with pretty much probably everybody here that Joe Biden should have stopped sending weapons to Israel way back at the beginning of all this. My head tells me, with all the stuff like Netanyahu being such a bastard, the next time there's a conflict, the next time Israeli soldiers get killed in a skirmish in Gaza, Netanyahu, these Israeli soldiers died because Joe Biden didn't send us weapons. And then I imagine we could be in a worse place. As horrible as everything is, I imagine we could be in a worse place now And I would like to know what you think about the fact that if Biden had done what we all think is the right thing, it could have actually turned out worse by now because of everything that's so screwed up with the media and our government and the opposition and Netanyahu.
Is that a question to me, Alana, or both?
But either one of you.
Okay.
You said a worse place, and I don't know how much worse it can be than a 9-month genocide. I don't know how much worse it can be than, Palestinians living in the United States and in the West, knowing that their money is funding and murdering their own people. I don't know how much worse of a place we could be in. I grasp the structure and what you're thinking in that question, but I think it's also important to understand that there's not much worse than a genocide.
So can I half agree with you, half disagree with you?
You can do whatever you
I
want.
worry when people say it can't get worse, because I think the world can always get worse. I think things can always get worse. Unfortunately, human capacity for evil is astonishing. I also think I've lived through the last 8 years in this country, and things have got worse every year.
It's worse every day.
We say at the end of every year, well, it can't be worse than 2020, can't be worse than 2022, and then 2024 is like, hold my halal beer. And it's kind of like,
but I think
it gets worse all the time.
But I think the premise of the question was if then
Biden.
yes.
So what I would say to you, to the gentleman there, and I should point out you're wearing a "Let's Go Biden"
yes,
cap.
and
I like the t-shirt. I like the t-shirt. Let's go Kamala. I'm Kamala right now. I'm all for bringing in Kamala. Who knows? By the time this airs, it could be Kamala. I would just say this. I would say that I don't agree with you that if Biden had held back weaponry and military, we would be in a worse place. I wrote a piece for The Guardian a few months ago making the point that Ronald Reagan picked up a phone and told Menachem Begin to stop bombing Beirut, and within 20 minutes the bomb stopped. Joe Biden had the power to do that, and he didn't, and I don't think history will forgive him for that. What I would say, though, to come back to my worst point, and I'm saying this to a crowd of many people, I'm sure, are Muslim here as well, I hear a lot of people saying, well, it can't be worse under Trump. And I would point out that Donald Trump is a man who uses Palestinian as a pejorative. Like, he literally uses it as a debate. It's now entered the lexicon as like, you're an idiot, you're ugly, you're Palestinian. Like, it's added to his list of abuse. And I do think it could and would be worse for the Gazans if Donald Trump were president. That doesn't excuse anything Joe Biden said, but I'm under no illusion. I would like us all not to be under any illusions about what the other guy is going to say. And it worries me when I hear Ben Gvir, probably the worst member of the Israeli government, saying, we can't wait for Trump. Trump's going to give us a freedom that Biden didn't give us. That petrifies me as someone who cares about the future.
Well, we'll know soon.
Okay. We'll know. That was very pessimistic.
It was.
We won't know. We're going to, gentleman here, yes.
So as a segue to exactly this discussion, where do you guys see, is there hope? I mean, can something positive come out in terms of, after all this is done, finally, what do you think is going to happen?
There's the Palestinians live off of hope. Our hope springs eternal for Palestinians. We are the most hopeful people in the world. It's one of the reasons why we've been able to continue on for 76 years of brutal military occupation. I think that there's always hope, and free Palestine is our hope. Free Palestine and freedom and liberation for all people. And I think we're going to have to go through a lot of really hard times to get to that. But I think that we should brace ourselves and go through them in order to get to the other side.
Well said. And one thing I always throw in is people confuse hope and optimism. They're not the same thing.
No.
You can be deeply pessimistic about the future and still not give up on hope.
Me.
Gentleman here.
Alana, thank you for inspiring so many to want to do the things they need to do to create meaningful change. It's making a big difference, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
This question is both for Mehdi as well as Alana. Mehdi, you had mentioned global intifada. Alana, you had mentioned we're seeing a shift in ways we just did not expect in our lifetimes, our parents' lifetimes. So I'd like to ask both of you, what is something that you realistically expect to see happen in the next 5 years that you would have never imagined happening before the recent events?
Oh, in the next 5 years, free Palestine. See, hope and optimism.
Hope and optimism.
Hope and optimism in
Your
one.
question, in the next 5 years, or what we've seen in the recent months? What did I never?
What we expect to see, what you hopefully expect to see realistically happen in the next 5 years.
Oh, Because I was going to say what I didn't expect ever to see was Nancy Pelosi signing a letter saying, maybe we should condition weapons to Israel. I was like, wow, Israel's really gone that far that even Nancy Pelosi's come out and said that. What do I expect to see? Yeah, I'm super pessimistic. I'm someone who says that there's a lot of, there is light at the end of the tunnel, but it's a super long tunnel. And it's going to be dark for a very long time. And those of us who have hope shouldn't give up hope. I do think what you will see in the next 5 years is you're going to see more and more college protests. You're going to see more and more kids. Think about the 15, 16, 17-year-olds who have spent the last 9 months. Think about those of us with children who have seen our children watch the last 9 months. And think about what they're going to do when they get to college, when they get into the workplace. The reason there was such a brutal crackdown on kids on campus, why it took over our news cycle while people were being butchered in Gaza, is because the people in power are losing their shit at the idea that, oh my God, look what's happening on my kids' campuses. Look what's happening at Harvard and Yale and Columbia. They know they've lost control of the younger generation. They know they've lost control of the future.
Yeah.
And as Alana mentioned earlier, Mitt Romney sat on a stage like this with Antony Blinken and he said, we have to ban TikTok because the kids are getting all their info from Palestine.
Yeah.
Like, Mitt, you're not supposed to say that out loud, but he said it to Blinken on stage. So I think you're going to see a lot of youth activism. Young people, as ever, are going to save the day.
And I know we didn't cover it, or we didn't talk about it yet, but, I think that's why the ICJ ruling was so important is, now this entity that had, been the only democracy in the Middle East, the most moral army in the world, is now considered by the highest court in the land.
I mean, it's an anti-Semitic court.
Yeah. It's a Hamas court. It's considered an apartheid. They have, in no uncertain terms, called it that. And I think that may not mean much for right now, but it will mean a lot for the future and the way the discourse and the conversation around Palestine.
Well, just one small thing.
Yeah.
I've worked at NBC, I've worked at Al Jazeera, I've worked at the BBC, I've worked at Sky. People argue over language in these media companies. What do we say? You saw the memo leaked from the New York Times, don't say occupy, don't say genocide. And what's interesting is, for months, even when I was at NBC, the argument always is, well, is Gaza occupied? Didn't they pull out in 2005? I spent years arguing with pro-Israel people on TV. Well, we didn't, what do you mean Gaza occupation? We left in 2005.
We left.
The ICJ has now been very clear. Gaza is occupied territory. The debate's over. Let's take the next question. We've got a few in line.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to see what your thoughts are on what's happening with Bella and Adidas right now.
Can you speak up a little bit closer, Michael? I can't hear you.
Okay. I wanted to see what your thoughts are on what's happening with Bella and Adidas right now.
It's really unfortunate, but since she hasn't made a statement about it, I don't want to be the first one to. But I appreciate the question.
As a non-Hadid, can I make a statement?
I mean, sure. Yes, of course.
My view is, what the F is Adidas doing? And I'm British, so I say Adidas, not Adidas. It's
Adidas.
Ridiculous. And I got into it with Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL on social media because the idea that you can say to a Palestinian model who wasn't born in 1972 that you cannot advertise a sneaker associated with the 1972 Olympics because Palestinians carried out acts of terror at those Olympics, the only thing you can say they have in common is that they're Palestinian, which is the definition of bigotry. It's the definition of racism, right? There's no debate about it. If you're saying that you are linked to those people, what are you linked on? Oh, because you're all Palestinian. Then that's the definition of collective punishment, collective blaming, bigotry, racism. And I think Adidas, whatever the hell we want to call this anti-Palestinian shoe company, has basically just kind of rolled over for not just Zionism or Israel, rolled over for a bunch of racists. Let's just be clear about that. Sorry, next question.
So that was the perfect segue to my question, because you are a fashion icon, and a lot of us look to you.
Thank you.
To hear more. What are your thoughts on ethical consumerism? How do we do more just in our normal day-to-day purchases?
I think, first of all, the BDS movement, the BNC are, great ways for places where you can see what is being targeted to be boycotted. I think that it's important to look into the things that you're consuming, make sure that they're, not produced or associated with, the Zionist state of Israel. And I think that it's important to support Palestinian-led businesses. The future of a free Palestine is also investing in a free Palestine. And so it's important that we put our money where our mouth is in that way, that we're looking to Palestinian-led businesses, that as Palestinians and Arabs, we are, creating those hubs for these people. There's so many people who've lost their jobs because of their advocacy. There's so many people who have, been pushed out or silenced. And I think that the people who have means should be creating these, communities within the spaces that they are experts in, or, like Zateo, and places where you can go and that you're not going to face those types of silencing. So, yeah.
It's such a great point, because we do focus on the boycotting.
Yes.
What is the replacement of things you boycott?
Divest, but you have to invest.
Yes. And the B and the D get a lot of coverage.
Yeah.
I wish we gave as much coverage to S, because that's actually the big political tool, which is sanctions, which people like Bernie Sanders and others have talked about in a limited way. I'd like to see more. But yes, gentlemen.
Hi, I was just wondering about college campuses and protests, and I know you talked about that too as someone who's covered college campuses and been on one. How do you respond when people say that, oh, the students just protested because it was like the sexy topic in the moment, or because it was kind of, it was in the moment they did it and now it's kind of died down? How do you respond to criticism of activism like this?
I mean, being hit with bear spray isn't sexy. I don't know. Maybe I could make it sexy. I don't know. I'll try. That is not a free invitation to bear spray me. I think that the type of conversation that is being had now about, these student-led protests is the same type of conversation with a different context that was had about, student protests around Vietnam. There's always going to be a way to try to make it look like students don't really know what they're talking about, but it's like you're putting these people into institutions in order to be educated. You're educating them on what is wrong and right in the world, and then you're expecting them to shut up when they see something wrong. So I think it was amazing, it was phenomenal. Thank you for being involved in it. Every student protest I went to and saw was peaceful, beautiful, educational. I just think the best thing about it, and I became so invested when I saw that the people of Gaza were thanking the students.
It was a real slap in the face to the kind of propaganda. Like, these are just students doing it for their own performance. Nobody, they're not helping anyone. And then you see Hind's mother is crying on tape saying, "Thank you for calling it Hind Hall. That meant so much to me." And I was like, really? I mean, this is literally from the people on the ground. And also I'm glad you mentioned Vietnam, because of course, Vietnam, the civil rights movement, apartheid South Africa, the Iraq war, students are on the right side of every issue.
Always.
So I don't think you want to be on the wrong side of student protests, really.
And it's always like the first domino, or one of the first dominoes to fall when something is about to change. So thank you.
We have more time for a couple more questions, yes?
Thanks, Mehdi. Hi, Alana. You briefly spoke about visiting Palestine for the first time. And as a Palestinian who has never been to Palestine yet, we often engage in conversations about Palestine in the context of suffering and expulsion and apartheid, and the list goes on. So what would you tell people who have never been to Palestine about your experience visiting?
Oh, you're going to make me cry. I mean, the minute I stepped foot in Palestine, I felt like I was home. Woo, you got me on that one. It is like, I think every Palestinian, every person who's been around a Palestinian knows how inviting Palestinians are, and giving. They would, literally give you the shirt off their back. They would feed you more than you want to eat. And that's what Palestine is. It's community. I remember one of the times I was there, I saw a car accident happen on the street, a fender bender, and everyone on the street just stopped to try to help to redirect traffic, to make sure that the people in the car were okay. And it's, you don't see that anywhere else in the world, where people are going to stop their day in order to make sure that these people are okay. And it's because we've been taking care of ourselves for so long that we take care of each other. And so it's just the most communal, beautiful place in the world. And it's not beyond me that I was able to experience Palestine and so many Palestinians weren't. It's I have reverence for the fact that I used my, American white privilege in order to go there. But I feel so proud that I was able to go before, I will be able to go back when it's free. But I hope that you get to experience it because it's like nothing else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was, yes.
What was it like for you when you were in Ramallah? I didn't get to ask you that.
It was a little insane.
Yeah.
It was a little insane. It was great. People lovely, but it's also driving there is a little
You have to have, strong continence to drive.
Also, it's so beautiful what you said. You said, when I went to Palestine, I felt like I was home.
Immediately.
And the troublemaker in me wants to say to you that, given your mother's here, how'd you feel when you went to Ireland?
I also felt like I was home.
Just checking. Just checking. All right, we've got time. If anyone wants another question, last call for question. Otherwise, this will be the last question.
Thank you guys for this conversation. I'm very grateful for both of you. So as a Native American, half Indian from India, it's been really, it's like reliving everything that happened many years ago in the United States. And it's been, very challenging so this conversation has been very embracing. And I teach yoga, so I worked with a Palestinian woman for many, many years. She moved to Europe, and everything that you said earlier was exactly what she gave. She was very generous. But I'm very excited when I saw about your watermelon pictures, and it brought me so much joy because it broke my heart that there wasn't enough conversations and stories, and it makes me even my heart sing more that you're gonna focus also on other voices, hopefully maybe some indigenous
100%.
from other parts of the world. What excites you about that project?
I mean, what you said, I think, highlighting the voices that have not been heard. I think indigenous voices, I think oppressed voices. I think, there's the beauty of what has been happening with the Free Palestine movement is the solidarity with so many other movements. Because, oppressed people understand oppressed people. You hear, it's like a dog whistle. You hear what's happening, and we're called together to work together in tandem in order for us all to be free. So it is not beyond us that having conversations around Palestine is also having conversations around indigenous people and oppressed people around the world. And so we will be having those conversations and highlighting those voices, and it's super important to us. And, I appreciate you bringing that up because it's not just about Palestine. We're all holding hands together and on our way to freedom and liberation.
I know, this is land back for sure.
Yes.
All the way.
Land back and liberty for all, yeah.
Sadly, we're out of time. This has been the most fun I've had at a We're
Let's
Not
do it
Kidding.
again.
We should definitely do it again. I
right
also
now?
enjoyed all of you being here. We've been doing We're Not Kidding for several months now.
But this is the best episode.
This is the best
I know.
one, without a shadow of a doubt. And I know that Bassem is too busy on tour to ever watch this or hear me say that this is the best one we've done. The live show
I'm going to send it to him.
here in the DC area. This has been great with the audience. The show is still very new, though, so please do like it, subscribe, support, share it with your friends. Click on whatever you click on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. It's also on YouTube, and it's also obviously on Zeteo. Please do sign up, subscribe to Zeteo, support this new media company. Please do support Watermelon Pictures. But for now, let's give a big round of applause to our special guest.
Thank
Alana
you.
Hadid.
Thank you. Yeah.
We're Not Kidding is a Zeteo production. I'm your host, Mehdi Hasan, and today's co-host was Alana Hadid. Our executive producer is Kieran Alvey. Our senior producer and editor is Frank Capello. Our music was composed by Andy Clausen, our design by Alicia Tatone, and the title card animation is by Ehsan Mezghali. And special thanks to our sponsors today, Trivision Studios in Washington, D.C.